you.
Yeah, I just started.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Today is a rainy April 1st. I don't have any April Fool's jokes. I should have thought of them getting here, but I didn't. So nice to see everyone. This is the Homelessness and Housing Subcommittee. And I guess we'll just get right to it. We do have public comment, but we'll have public comment on the agenda items as well. So let's,
Sounds good.
yeah.
So good afternoon. Thank you all for joining. I'm Mel Burnett, Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office with the Community Services Division. So I'll be presenting staff's preliminary funding recommendations for the 2025 Notice of Funding Availability, or the NOFA, for our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So this was released in collaboration with the County of Marin. We were able to utilize their online application form. It was released January 22nd, and the application period closed on February 19th with a total amount of $500,000 available. So the city received 3 applications, and a city staff review panel evaluated each application using criteria established in the guidelines for administration of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So just to sort of go over those criteria, so they include community benefit, so whether it provides tangible, cost-effective benefit to the community and the intended beneficiaries. Development team capacity, so showing development team experience and capacity including skills, experience, and other resources. Management team capacity, so showing organizational experience and capacity, which could be to achieve the proposed activity, including the organization's financial health. We also look at readiness to proceed. So this could be a combination of items, including site control, scope of work, identifying needed repairs, expected zoning and planning approval, construction and acquisition start timelines, relocation and/or replacement housing plan, if that's included. We also look at leverage and collaboration. So this is other financing and in-kind contributions to the project. So applications with greater matching sources receive more favorable consideration. And then per unit subsidy. So there's no specific set per unit subsidy, but a reasonable per unit amount. So that could be evaluated based on target population, project type, and cost effectiveness. So also we do look at additional considerations. So this could include whether it serves low or very low income residents or extremely low income, whether it includes 20% or more of permanent supportive housing, and also whether it's in a quarter mile of a transit center. So I'll just give a brief overview of each of the projects and sort of review some of the strengths and weaknesses based on those evaluation criteria that the panel saw in those applications. And so they won't be in any particular order. So we'll look at first, Abode Housing applied for pre-development funding for the construction of 100% affordable housing at 519 4th Street. So this proposed project includes 56 apartments for individuals and families. And these will be restricted at varying affordability levels, ranging from 20% to 60% area median income. And actually 50% of the units are going to be designated for formerly homeless individuals. So the funding award at this time will be utilized for project design resources to complete both the planning application and the entitlement process. And I would say it's important to note, we did indicate the total project cost, which is estimated around $54 million for this project. However, the pre-development costs are closer to about $3 million. And so many of those items are actually scheduled to take place within this current calendar year. And often securing that pre-development funding can be quite challenging. And so these design products can then allow for additional funding to come through once those design and the vision for the project is really sort of created. So that does actually have a large impact on the overall project. And just also for the evaluation criteria, so this project, community benefit, the construction of those new 56 affordable units being added to the city's regional housing needs allocation. It is providing for low, very low, and extremely low income households, as well as that 50% being designated for formerly homeless individuals. Development team capacity, the project team has a lot of experience with successful completion of affordable and permanent supportive housing sites. Management team capacity, they do have deep organizational experience with constructing and operating 100% affordable developments. And they have experience with including up to that 50% of units for formerly homeless individuals. In terms of readiness to proceed, so 519 4th Street is currently city-owned property, and so they do have an exclusive negotiating agreement for 12 months at this time for the project at that site. Leverage and collaboration. So developer contribution is at $100,000 to date. They also have a pending county request for $300,000 for the county's current housing trust fund, NOFA, which they have at this time, and a pending application for technical assistance through ABAG, or Association of Bay Area Governments, with anticipated CDFI, or Community Development Financial Institution funding. So those are some of the other leverage. Reasonable per unit subsidy, this one is around $3,500 per unit for the 56 units of new construction. It does align with housing element goals such as ending and preventing homelessness, meeting housing needs through a range of housing choices and affordability levels, and adding again to the city's regional housing needs allocation by constructing those 56 units of affordable housing. Additional considerations, it is located within a quarter mile of transit. That's within a quarter mile of the bus depot in San Rafael. It does serve very low and extremely low income households. And it does include 20% or more of permanent supportive housing. So based on the strengths of the project application, staff have recommended awarding the full amount of $200,000 for the requested fund. Next, so EAH Housing applied for rehabilitation work for 28 units of existing complex at 455 Canal Street. So this is their Riviera Apartments project. This complex was built in the 1970s, and it does provide housing for mostly families earning at or below 50% AMI, or area median income. The proposed construction work includes seismic upgrades, electrification replacements, replacing gas-fired wall heaters with a more efficient unit, and replacing kitchen, bathroom, and interior cabinetry and appliances. So we did have one of the engineers with Public Works review the project based on its location in a floodplain. So the estimated construction costs, which you only look at the hard cost, so that's about $5 million of construction costs. That does actually exceed the 50% threshold. So it exceeds 50% of the property's assessed value. So due to this, it designates the work as substantial improvements under FEMA, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency regulations. So this designation triggers certain San Rafael municipal codes and other national codes, the most significant of which is a requirement that the lowest floor elevation of residential units has to be raised at least a foot above the base floodplain level. Based on this, for this location, that could mean raising the building 2 or more feet, which obviously has a substantial cost associated. There is an alternative to remove the residential units on the ground level and not place any sort of active use on that ground level. But so this was more recent information based on the compliance that would be required for this project. And so due to that, right now, just the readiness of the project, it's not recommended that we would fund the project right now, given the need to revise both the scope and the cost for compliance with those floodplain requirements. The other aspects of the project criteria had other strengths, such as the community benefit, preserving and improving affordable housing units, serving low-income families. The development team and management team capacity, they have deep organizational experience with constructing and operating 100% affordable developments. They have leverage and collaboration, reasonable per unit subsidy. So it would be at a little over $17,000 per unit for the rehabilitation work of those 28 very low income units. It does align with housing element goals such as ensuring housing habitability and maintenance for affordable units. And it is located within a quarter-mile of transit. It provides for larger families and serves very low income households. So at this time, just given the significant compliance requirements, we don't recommend a funding award at this time. EAH may reapply for funding for a future NOFA or funding opportunity. And we do anticipate that additional properties facing this challenge to comply with floodplain requirements will continue to happen. So staff are seeking to identify additional funding and resources that could assist and support rehab efforts for locations in the floodplain. And then also we had an application from Marin Foster Care. So they applied for funding in support of their recent acquisition of 158 to 166A Park Street. So these are 6 one-bedroom units that will have a proposed 70% area median income affordability restriction. And the intended purpose for these units is to serve transition-aged youth, so clients who are transitioning out of the Marin Foster Care system. So project evaluation criteria, it does provide community benefit, providing designated affordable housing units for transition-aged youth, conversion of those 6 market rate units to deed restricted affordable housing provides a community benefit. The development team capacity and management team capacity. So Marin Foster Care has a lot of experience in providing services to foster youth in the county. And they have recently started as a housing provider. So they had an acquisition of a 10-unit building in Novato in 2023. So serving the same purpose. So they are right now building their capacity, but at this time do have a more limited experience and capacity with development and management of housing properties. Readiness to proceed, Marin Foster Care did close on the property acquisition on January 30th of 2025. Leverage and collaboration. They have been awarded $300,000 from Marin County's Housing Trust Fund. There is a contingency for that to receive city funding, which is the county's typical practice with their housing trust. They're also anticipating a loan from Marin Community Foundation. And then along with that, there are the applicant's reserves and private donations that will go towards this acquisition. Reasonable per unit subsidy. So staff is currently recommending a total award of $60,000. So that would be a per unit subsidy rate of $10,000 per unit. And then alignment with housing element goals, which it does prevent homelessness in San Rafael and meets housing needs through a range of housing choices and affordability levels throughout the city. Additional considerations. So it does serve very low and extremely low income households. So the affordability restriction is being set at 70% AMI. However, the applicant has indicated that most of those TAY clients will be at 30% AMI or lower. So it would ultimately be serving those individuals. An additional note for this project is at the time of acquisition, 5 of the 6 units were occupied by existing tenant households. And those tenant households do have incomes ranging from up to 80% to 100% area median income. One TAY client has since moved into the vacant unit on the property. However, due to the existing tenant households not being displaced, and then just relying on TAY tenants to move into vacant units as those turnover over time, there will be a delay in fully serving TAE clients through this project. So that's just something to be noted. So those are the 3 applications and the review based on the evaluation criteria from all 3. And we welcome feedback from the Housing and Homelessness Committee.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for going through it. So what we'll do is we'll just start with questions from Councilmember Kurtz and myself, and there will be time to have public comment. I know you're more than public comment. Yes,
Apologies for that. Just before we move on,
please.
I wanted to, my name is Micah Hinkle. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director. I wanted to recognize the amount of work and effort put into this NOFA and the review and the time. We talk about the housing division, like, who analyzed all this stuff? Well, it's the 3 people, primarily 2 people in this room, 2 people. Those are all these applications, projects, that really deeply analyze these pieces that come up with these recommendations. It's not easy, right? Love to fund all of them, right? And to the maximum amount to bring these things forward. But we have a tiny, small funding pool in the greater scheme of things. We recognize how valuable these dollars are. So really, when the recommendations, these are staff recommendations. Obviously, they need to go through the subcommittee and council for full adoption, but recognizing kind of where we're at. But I wanted to acknowledge Mel and Alexis for their extensive work in this and expertise to get it to this space. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. We know that putting this together, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. Your presentation was really hit all of that. So Councilmember, why don't you start with questions?
Sure, so I just want to make sure, so we have, the current NOFA is at 500, right? Okay, and we haven't said we're only gonna spend half of it conversation. Right, we're not, it's all available if we want to, so, okay. And then this is the first time we've actually tied into the county process, the timing. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how we got to that decision and how that has helped or, helped this process?
Yeah, well, I'll just speak to, I think it's greatly helped just utilizing their application format for doing that online and also being able to tie along with them releasing their own notice as well as the federal dollars, so CDBG and home that's been released. But I'll defer to Alexis in terms of how we got to that partnership.
I would say we realized we're asking for a lot of the same things that the county's asking for. And we know that our housing providers and our nonprofits are doing a million things. And so to the extent that we can streamline a process and not ask for the same thing in 2 different formats, we want to try and do that. And so we're really happy that the council supported us in trying this out, working with the county. And I would echo Mel, it seems like it's worked really well this time around. And so, and I'm on that committee with the county, and you've had a chance to meet with the county in terms of reviewing your recommendations, and I believe all 3 of these are also ones that if I recall, I've looked at before, right? And it's yeah, so, and that also gives us the opportunity to do matching funding from multiple areas, so that's good. I guess my question is around the pre-development versus preservation, and there's a split here. The conversation on Canal, the one on Canal in the sea level, that didn't come up in conversation with the county. So I don't know if that's new information, because I think there was actually there was initially around support for that, but having that added information, I think would affect that conversation with the county as well.
Yeah, so we sort of, I think maybe it was 3 weeks ago that we initially had Public Works review. And so we've been able to meet with like our engineer at Public Works, Dawn, who's our chief building official, got on a call with EAH to be able to help sort of discuss a lot of those factors. We actually had a call with the county just this morning with the developer as well. And so they're sort of going through a process of figuring out what kind of funds or how they can even possibly redivert some of the funds that have already been awarded.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, so it's sort of still in process with.
Were they surprised?
I would say so, yeah.
Oh, bummer. Okay. All right. Okay, in terms of, can you speak a little bit, and I'm looking here, but the number of units, so there's for the acquisition property, there's 6 units.
3 are currently occupied by Tay, or 3 are currently, is it 3 and 3 right now?
My understanding is that there's one occupied by a Tay client, who recently moved in, and that the other 5 are occupied by existing clients, but I do know that the applicant is here, and so they could address that better than me.
Yeah, I can address that. So my name's Ashley Hurd. I'm the executive director for Marin Foster Care. And so when we purchased the building, one tenant was moving out. He had given notice. As of last Monday, Make It Home put in furniture into that unit. And we actually, one of our youth was living in a shelter and he moved into that unit. So that was really amazing. That was just a week ago. We do know we will have another unit vacant at the end of April, and we'll have another one vacant at the end of October. So that would be 3 within the first 9 or so months. And then the other 3, one of them is looking to purchase a home. As Mel mentioned, the other tenants who are currently there do have really great income streams and great jobs, but they're also single, a couple of them are single, looking to branch off. And so we know that that's kind of in the works, which is why we have been so adamant about purchasing studios and 1 bedrooms, because we know the turnover is so great. And I would just say one more thing about the turnover is our Novato building, within 10 months, we had 6 Tay youth living in there. When we thought we'd only have 2. People just turned over, they left, whatever, bought a house. And so currently we have 6 living in there right now. And that was just within 10 months.
And we also have somebody moving out and moving on, so somebody
Yeah.
else can come in.
Yeah, so someone else is moving out and then we'll have another one come in.
So it's a continuous
Yeah.
cycle. For the pre-development one, for the new construction, how much more do they need? In terms of, of that 3 million, you said that, I mean, they're going after trying to get a lot in terms of, and is that 3 million pretty? Is that pretty fair number, or is that gonna change?
I think that those are all estimates for their pre-development costs. So it includes what they need to complete the planning applications and the entitlement process. So they do have that $300,000 pending award from the county. And then they would be applying for that CDFI, so the community development financing. So that's what I'm aware of. I don't know if Alexis is aware of other aspects.
And the applicant has sort of divided it into 2 chunks. So there's 600K in this initial pre-development dollars that would push them to the next milestone. And then another about 2.5 million after that. So this is really, that initial 600K is helping get to entitlement.
Okay. Okay, great.
A couple of questions, building what Councilmember Kurtz was already asking. So also curious about the Marin County match part. So on Abode, there was a timing, you said it's pending, that their match for 300,000 is pending. So just
So
curious.
they applied for the county's housing trust fund for 300,000, which they're in a current NOFA cycle as well. So they released it also at the same time as
So
us.
pending mean they've applied, but they haven't been told whether they're gonna
Right.
receive it. And do you feel, and it's probably the same question for the next one, does it give them an advantage for that 300,000 if the city funds puts dollars, is what was recommended, 200,000 in there?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And I think that the county always includes that contingency that the city also provide funding based on it being in our jurisdiction. So we would be sort of looking at needing to provide some amount of funding.
You mentioned that, is it one to, I don't know how to say that out loud. Is that a 50% to 1 match, or like when you said that they want to have, the city have some skin in the game, which I can understand, but do they have a set formula for that, or is it it's just each project is handled differently?
It's a case by case.
Case by case.
We're not aware of any particular specific requirement.
Because then on, so Marin foster care, you had said in here, so is that the same? Oh, so that's the contingent on city funding, so the 300,000, they've already been awarded. So that money's already said, so different than the above, they've already said they're gonna have 300,000. Regardless of the amount that would give.
Yes.
Okay,
And they are returning. So the 300,000 was awarded, I believe, late February on the 25th. And that was restricted at 30% area median income. I think there was a little bit of maybe confusion or something on that. So they are gonna be returning because the property is gonna be restricted at 70% AMI.
The applicant's gonna be returning back to.
The county will be returning to the Board of Supervisors,
Oh.
because they put 30% in the declaration
So
of
they have to get
restrictions.
it approved
But they
again.
have to, yeah, change it to the 70%.
I can speak to that too, if you want me to. So, basically, there was a confusion around the Tay young adults who are living there are under 30% AMI, but there's no way we could sustain a building what we have at 30% AMI. So just like we did with our Novato building, we restricted it to 70% AMI. A lot of our youth have zero income, but it's all subsidized by the programs they're a part of, which is how they're paying rent. So that rent is still under 70% AMI, but the youth have no or little income. That's where the confusion got around. So the regulatory agreement was not recorded, so it seems rather simple from what I understand from the county's perspective, is they just need to put it back in front of the board. The board approved it at no problem. And they've approved our Novato, obviously Novato building at no problem at 70% AMI, understanding who's living there.
Is that gonna be on the consent agenda, or is it gonna be an agenda item? Do you have any idea?
I'm not sure. It was on consent.
It was on
consent before,
Yeah.
And then just a procedural
Yeah.
clarification, because I saw you note that Marin Foster Care already has a county award and 519 4th Street does not, and that is because Marin Foster Care applied through the county's rolling application process
Right.
prior to this NOFA.
Got it, okay. So on the criteria, which I really appreciate that, because when we
Mhm.
created the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there's a lot of different ways we could allocate these really precious dollars to Director Hinkle's point. Are these weighted differently? Are they all, whatever, 9 of them, 8 of them, they're all an equal percentage, or has the council given any, and I don't think we've given any policy direction in terms of weighting.
That's a
one
good idea.
over-
Good idea.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
that's,
not
that is a good
asking,
idea, but
I'm
yeah,
just
there's
more-
no.
So to today, there's not any weighting, because when I think about the policy, like, we're here representing the policy part of it, okay. So right now, there is no weighting, okay, so that's, and then, so, okay, you talked, and thank you Ashley for speaking to the timing of the unit availability, that was one of my questions. And so Marin Foster Care is in the room, in the house, literally, so the ask was 250 and it's 60,000, it's much less, and so for me, I understand why staff, I think I understand, maybe I don't understand, why is staff recommending 600, not even 100, especially if the second one had received allocation to Councilmember Kirch's point, and then that money went away, so there's something there. And again, if we're looking at, the reason I ask is if the type criteria is rated in terms of populations we're serving, Tay historically throughout Marin County does not have the types of subsidies that we see, so that would, if there was a weighting, that would come out more, but we don't, so that's one of my kind of questions, concerns that I have right now, looking at this initial recommendation.
And I think it was really helpful for us to hear from the applicant just now about the turnover that's anticipated and upcoming in the units. I think maybe that wasn't known at the time of application, so we didn't know when we were evaluating, but I think it that makes a difference, because I think we're thinking about, okay, when is it going to benefit the intended beneficiaries? So already it sounds like by the fall, you'll be up to half the units being Tay clients. So I think that makes a difference. I think that the two primary things were the timing of Tay clients getting into the units. And then the other piece is, and I think we want to support organizations that are growing in the acquisition and housing provider space, but we do have criteria around experience. And so that was one of the other criteria, just noting that this is an organization that's growing in that space.
Okay. No, and that's fair, and that's why the criteria, we can just put it out on the table and talk about it, amongst all of us. Because I do hear you, we do know the applicant is a small organization, but we actually know the people. So it's not like we don't know them. So that's why, again, when I saw that as one of the weights for me, that's why I was questioning that, because when I look at it, there's other ways that I would weight some of the good stuff in here and not have that. So what I hear you possibly saying is, and we wouldn't put you on the spot now, because this goes to the council, this is for the subcommittee to weigh in, and the council has the whole, up on the dais and everything else. That it would be possible that staff would make a different recommendation to the council versus what's being talked about today.
Correct.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, and usually go just to comments, but because you're all sitting here and we have a little bit of time, if there's anything else that you would like to say before we.
And I did, can I just say, I did share your letter to the
Great.
group, so
Awesome.
everyone received that.
Great, thank you.
It is public correspondence.
Great. I could just add a couple of comments. I think I talked about a few of them. I think, yes, we are newer to this space. I think we do now have a track record, which is kind of great to say with our Novato building. I think, I am no expert in the housing world, but I have pulled in a great group of housing experts now. And I think we've been able to really branch out to the community. And a lot of people have gotten involved, and I won't go into those details now, but one day we can chat about it. And it's been a really great way to grow our network of folks who are supporting this TAY group. And so that's really exciting. I think, our hope is that other organizations would follow suit in the city of San Rafael. We know that, I kind of put this in the email, but we are a sure thing, right? We have the building, like we have a youth living in there, and we took out we have a bridge loan from a donor that we need to pay back, and I'm working really hard to do that. And I think the surprise that we saw in Nevada, which is why we were replicating in San Rafael, is how quickly these units were turning over. And how quickly almost our entire building was, TAY youth, which is really awesome. And it truly does prevent homelessness. I said, our youth that moved in was in a shelter, and he was able to move in here. And I would say, all of our foster kids are former homeless youth, if you really look at it in that way, that they didn't have anywhere to go. And because we send so many of our kids out of our county, 35% right now, to keep them here, especially when they turn 18 and 19, to where they don't have to then move to other counties really far away to now try to start their life, they can stay in this county and get the support that they need. It is just so much better for their future, and that they can stay and go to college and they can stay to work, they can stay in relationship with their foster parent. There's so many benefits to that. So, the other really, I think something to really note is that our units come out to about $375,000 per unit, where a lot of these new builds and things that you're seeing right now in the community and the county, they're up to $1 million a unit. So this is a way, I'm a firm believer, this is the way we need to go, is buy up these buildings and instead of trying to go to new builds, they're real, and some groups have to, and I understand that, but for us, it's been a really great economical approach to it. So. Do you have anything to add?
I would like to add that as a board member of MFCA, I started Make It Home to support foster youth, because when they age out, they're not given any support at all. 50% of foster youth end up homeless at some point. And I think especially in Marin, we can do much better than that. Speaking to our management team and how we manage housing in general, we might not be abode or EAH, but we know foster kids. And we know that this particular population, 18 to 21, nobody wants to rent because they're not only a vulnerable population, but quite honestly, they're a stupid population.
Yeah,
They're young and emotionally not mature, and they need a lot of support. And this particular organization knows that backwards and forwards, and we can give them the support that no other organization can give them. So as far as management of that population, we have it hands down better than any other organization. We're also giving them all of the furniture that they need so that they have a stable environment, and we're giving them food and gift cards and clothing and all sorts of peripheral support to make sure that they are well taken care of. So, and like Ashley said, it's done. It's done, and we have the space. And no, we're not building new housing, but we are keeping people off the streets. And that is of paramount importance, especially in this community. So.
The only one thing I would add to the management piece that you reminded me of is, we do have a professional management company that we work with, Brandy Property, who has been around for a very long time. And so we have a great relationship with them now. And Melissa actually lives on my street. And so and they've been really helpful in all of this as well. And we have so that's been really great. So we're not doing this all on our own. We're not trying to manage these buildings by ourselves.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see that, Melissa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment? Same thing? Chris, want to say anything? Yeah.
I'll say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
Chris Hart, nice to see you all. Thank you for this. I come as a housing advocate here of all kinds. But as I saw this agenda and I kind of went through it and I looked across it, it seemed to me that the best thing to do would be to deploy funds where they can actually be used right away. So I'm not sure if the NOVA has to be used, if it's a use it or lose it kind of a thing. But what struck me was this. So I would just reorganize it, frankly. I would put foster care first. I'd actually give some money to just moving a floodplain level up. That seems very reasonable. I've done those things in the past. Big things to do, you can do them. But at $960,000 per unit for a vote, that's 60% higher than a high-end market rate development. 60%. So I guess I was going to go through and say on the team development side and management team side, I'd have an asterisk. Yeah, some people are new, some people are middle, some people just know how to game the system. It's almost like it's the affordable housing and industrial complex now. How is this 60% higher than a high-end market rate development? Something is off there. And it's in the pre-development side. So it's almost like, you should have enough funds to, if this was like, we're doing construction documents. Okay, that I get, because that's like ready to go. But pre-development, are we in schematics? Are we in design? Or are we just paying everyone's salary moving forward? I don't want to say that we should doge this thing, but something needs to look at there.
Yeah,
I like these. I know, I'm trying to get it, but it's like, there's something in there if it's 60%, and I would just put a lot of caution to everybody with that, because it doesn't seem like you're a long ways away from that unit. And it seems like some of your market rate developments are all revenue, and then you're gonna get some affordable units as well, that are just revenue to the city and are not drains on the city. Maybe you can deploy those funds elsewhere. That's what I like to say. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring it back. No chiming in, okay. And I didn't even time that public comment. Because I started. Okay, we'll bring it back to the committee for additional comments. I'll start with you. Director, did you want to add anything before we made any comments?
Just really our affordable housing trust fund at $500,000 is such tiny money. What we're really finding, like we're kind of projecting out of the pipeline, most of the housing units are actually become on market rate development. Right? That's what Chris definitely knows and understands. The one thing that we've all recognized is we need housing of all types and all levels. So that's why the struggle is trying to spread where the dollars kind of make the most play. What I will say about 519 4th Street's a little different is this is actually the type of pre-development money. It was really the most critical money for those type of projects because it's the risk money in essence. Like they use the money to leverage the next tranche of dollars that come in there. But the first one that's always lost on these is the pre-development numbers, which is what's it look like, the technical studies, all those parts. They typically don't; those come out of pocket for most developers. So that the ability to fund that, I actually think will leverage the rest of the dollars as they come down. It gets more ready. The other important part of this is also this is city-owned property. So, and then the targeted market that it's after is really some of the most hardest. That's why the cost value is so much higher because we're looking at formerly homeless and then also ones that need support services. So I agree with you when you look at the cost comparison. Yeah, these are really expensive units because it's the supportive services that go with them. And that's what a boat specializes. So it's a little different comparative. And that's why people look at We're in foster care versus abode versus EAH, all different platforms of need in different areas, so the cost factors are different, so. Just trying to recognize that.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And then just, sorry, one more question before I hear your comment. So when's the NOFA? I know we don't do the rolling anymore. We went to open and close, so we just closed it. Does it open up again? Is it a calendar year opening up? So is it when the fund gets to a certain balance?
So for the rolling,
We don't roll though, right? Only Marin County, I thought, does the rolling.
so the Marin County has a continuous rolling application for all types of projects. The council, started in fall of last year with a, capped rolling application pilot for acquisitions only. That funding has been expended for this fiscal year,
Okay,
but can be re-upped for the next fiscal year.
okay, so then. I get the right way. So the NOFA will be when we issue the next NOFA is really.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So assuming that we want to continue to track with the county, it would be beginning of 2026. They typically do annually and launch in January.
Okay, so they're count. Okay, so that's helpful. Thank you. Councilmember, what are your thoughts for that?
So
Staff?
I think it was similar to what we talked about last year when we were doing this. And the conversation our group had with the county and so many of these applications and so few dollars. That it was, how do we make the biggest bang for the buck? And across the board in our conversations, and there were many of these types of projects at the county level. It was really looking at not only low hanging fruit, but really looking at and really focusing on those type of projects that we can see immediate results. I think the abode housing project, I don't feel like there are NOFA dollars for really make that great of a difference in this pre-development stage, and we don't know when we'll see it. And I think we have such an urgent need right now to have these immediate results and serve the community. I also want to say the Novato model that has been out there is being brought up multiple times in the Homeless Policy Steering Committee, in the CDBG review committees, and also in older adult conversations for providing different levels of housing. And how can we collectively as a county identify these types of opportunities to be able to provide the needed housing for the entire community, these areas, these segments that are at risk, whether it's the the youth coming from foster care or older adults. So I am, sort of a repeat record from last year, as well as what I shared at the county conversation was, I'm more inclined to support and want to fully fund those that are a sure thing versus go into fund a little bit with the hope that it's gonna materialize. And we're just seeing so many projects now not materializing. And I would, because our NOFA funds are so small, I always say we could fund a doorknob with some of these bigger projects, and that's what it sort of feels like. If we want to support about housing at some level, right, to show that we support this project, I don't feel like we should under support a project that is readily working right now and actively serving the community. That doesn't fit with me.
You mean we're in foster care?
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
No, absolutely. We're in foster care. I mean, I've already taken off sea level thing. I feel bad for that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And I shared my comments with you earlier.
Yeah, thank you. And as I already mentioned, this does go to the full council, so you get a little bit of a preview of the way that these discussions go. So again, appreciate the staff for going through, as we do know, we get that how precious these dollars are, which is why we worked really hard to have the criteria. I do think having a conversation, what I would hope, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a staff recommendation, but I would, when it comes to the council, appreciate having the conversation on the dais if we should have a weighted percentage or not. Because when I look at this, to me, I would be heavier weighting the community benefit and the alignment with the housing element goals. I think that's a good point Councilman made about readiness to proceed. I know that historically we gave money, I think Canal Lines, and came back because they weren't able to proceed at all. And I also think the leverage and collaboration, none of these projects get done in a vacuum at all. So when I look at that, those would be the top ones for me. But again, there are 3 other council members we'd like to hear from, because I think that would help parse through some of this.
Mhm.
I hear the pain points, we'll just go through, so on abode, and Director, I really appreciate your comments about, how each one is different. These are not a bunch of apples, we have all the different fruits here. I think what we're trying to do with abode, it's a city site, I am fully supportive of that amount for all the reasons that we talked about. It's a variety of rent restrictions. And yeah, the dollar signs for Chris's point are eye popping, and I wish I could say that we have control over all those, and all we can do is play the cards that we're giving. So we want to continue to have that kind of support. We talked about that from a policy level for a really long time. And really, when you look at Simmerfell and our available sites, like, this is it. This is it. So we don't do it here. And to me, I'm really proud of us saying, hey, we have the site. We're gonna go ahead and try to make this happen. Maybe other jurisdictions would follow. On the sea level rise, raising one, and I do appreciate Chris's comment about we should still do some of the money there. To me, that is such an unknown, brand new part of the conversation that I agree with staff's recommendation. Let's just take a deep breath on that one, because oh my God, the ramifications of this is just enormous.
And we're gonna see more.
Yeah, and so I agree that we would wait on that. And then when it becomes to, we're in foster care, I'm really swayed by the fact that the success that it had in Novato, this fact that it's Tay youth, when I talk about community benefits, it's very hard to find this type of capital support for Tay youth. And I really want, I mean, I'm kind of laughing at the counties at 300 grand. I want them to put in more, but, and I regret that, just because they're really the agency that is primarily tasked with overseeing support for the Tay population. But I would want staff to come back with a higher number than the 60. And I can tell you, I mean, whatever that amount is, I would feel pretty confident just hearing what Councilmember Kurt said and how I'm feeling about it. I think that the rest of the council would probably say the same thing. So if it's the full amount or amount right under, I think it'll be a very active discussion. I think if you suggest a full amount, it won't be an active discussion to reduce it, but I think if it's less than, there might still be a discussion and a push. I'm just putting that out there to do the full amount. For all the reasons that we've talked about. And I wish you kind of kick out those other people that are there. Sorry, just saying it out loud. But I know that-
There's lots of.
Lots of lots.
Opportunities.
And I do,
I'm sorry, the mayor said we had to kick you out.
But I understand there's turnover, and I really, I think what Marine Foster Care is trying to do here, and I know that we had talked about way back when you got to Novato, and so Supervisor Lucan and I had talked about it literally over a year ago. And I really do think, I mean, you mentioned, Ashley, it's a different type of model, and I don't disagree with you on that. And it's something that is newer that we're seeing. And so for me to have one in San Rafael is something that I would be really proud of, because I can only imagine that if those youth aren't helped, they're gonna be camping on the city hall, which is, out on the lawn. So, so I think for those reasons, and I think what's super challenging, and I really appreciate staff, is that, again, none of these are the same. They're all really, really unique. And I know that the council, and this is the last part, Councilmember Kurtz was alluding to this, that we have $500,000. We know they're really precious. And I just do not recall a policy decision to not expend it, all the dollars. And again, that would be something to talk about at the dais. Like we've always talked about when we have it. My assumption, but I realized it was not baked in the policy, is we're always going to expend 100%. That was not said or not said. So to me, I think that was also what gave me pause. And I realized that it has to build up so we can expend it to future projects. But these are the ones that are before us today. So that would be, again, as you bring it to the council, like what is the policy part of it? I think would be really, really helpful. And do you know the timing of when it would come to the council?
We're anticipating April 21st to the
Okay.
council.
Okay. Fantastic. So do you have the information? Do you have any additional questions, Director Alexis or Mel, based on the conversation we've had? Or John? Sorry.
I just want to thank you for your comments. I also want to thank Mary Ann Lim from EAH is on. I did check with the city clerk. We're not able to accept any comment virtually, but thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate all that EAH has done in our community and continues to do. And yeah, we'll continue to partner in a way that makes sense going forward for sure. Okay.
Thank you for the comments and direction. That's very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any future agenda items? Okay. Public comment, this is any item not on the agenda. Do you have anything you'd like to speak to?
I'll try to finish my 2 minutes. You guys are awesome. This is amazing. I like used to work in the foster care system in other places and like, thank you. This is great. And thank you guys for working on this and supporting it. Okay, so I wanted to speak on the issue of the camping ordinance, just because I and lots of parents from San Rafael City Schools won't be at the city council meeting where I think this issue is set for the agenda on the 7th. So, you know, timing is timing, and I think a lot of parents would want to be heard on the issue, but can't, and we're encouraging people to write in, and so I participated in the working group, and it was really positive and productive in many ways, especially meeting people who had the lived experience of being homeless and talking to people about what they're going through. And I know there are proposed changes to the ordinance, which seem great in terms of protecting parks. I live near Gerstle Park, right across the street, and I think high fire danger parks and parks in general are just a really precious community resource that I really want to see us protect while we're trying to be compassionate and helpful also with this issue of homelessness. I did want to say that I do support more restrictions. I obviously don't support a wholesale ban. I think that's crazy and inhumane, and you know, aiding and abetting being penalized is just, to me, like from some other planet, and I wouldn't want that here at all. But I do think it's important to try to protect schools, playgrounds, and civic institutions more than we are under the current ordinance. And so I think this is a time when there's a lot of disrespect for government, and I hope that we can be respectful of our government and our civic institutions. And I think that the camping ban has to limit camping on city hall property and city property, their libraries, police stations, fire stations. I mean, these are important civic functions that are for everyone. And it's just critical that our new homeless ordinance actually address that reality in advance before it becomes a problem. Because I think we've been reactive with a lot of our homeless ordinance, you know, changes, and I want us to be proactive. And I do think that more protection for the schools, the playgrounds, libraries, city hall. I mean, that there's campers like right outside in front of this building. I just think it's a disgrace to what we're doing here and to what you all are doing here. And for you to have to deal with that on a daily basis working for us.
If you can finish up, I didn't
No,
find you.
I have no idea.
No,
More.
no.
I totally appreciate it all, but I just think we could do.
Okay, and thank you for your participation on the working group. Wonderful. Not seeing any other public comment, we're gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Right.
I know, we told them to.